became a time when I just checked out because I thought, there's nothing in this for me. And so we went years and years where that was just something for him, and I literally checked out.
You're listening to Get Your Marriage On, the fun and spicy podcast bringing you new tools and fresh ideas so that you can be the sexiest couple you know.
For many couples, myself included, intercourse can feel absolutely amazing and pleasurable, and couples can find deep meaning through intercourse as well. It can feel intimate, personal, sweet, and really bonding. However, intercourse isn't always fireworks for both people, and how can you make intercourse better for both people in the marriage? That's what we want to talk about in today's episode. I learned a lot in this episode that I can relate to. For instance, like many couples, a typical sex script is a she comes first routine where the couple works together to where she has an orgasm first, followed by him coming second. And this pattern makes sense and is effective because usually it takes women longer to climax for biological reasons. And for most couples, his orgasm usually comes from intercourse, while hers doesn't always come that way, as most women don't orgasm from intercourse alone. A few problems arise from this pattern, though, and this is what we're going to discuss in today's podcast. It's easy for either person to kind of check out and disconnect a bit while the other person is having their turn. It's easy to dismiss the pleasure that can be found through intercourse, even if you usually don't climax through intercourse. And there's also the idea of self-fulfilling prophecies at work and meanings, especially if you find yourself a little bored while waiting your turn. Ruth Buezis is a gifted educator, and she has taught thousands of people how to improve their sex lives from a Christian perspective. She was a guest on this podcast last year, see episode number 17, and I've invited her back to teach us more about how to make intercourse amazing. By the way, if you like what you hear on this podcast, you and your spouse will love our upcoming Embrace Your Sexual Intimacy Couples Retreat, where we go in depth on topics like this. The retreat is 3 days and 3 nights in October and will be very romantic. More details are on my website at getyourmarriageon.com and click on the link that says Couples Retreat. Ruth, welcome to the Get Your Marriage On podcast. So happy to have you here on again.
Oh, it's super fun to be back. I'm excited about our conversation today.
Yeah, me too. Just so people can get to know you a little bit better, I know you have 4 adult daughters. One of them's married, and you just have a grandson recently. Congratulations.
Yep.
That is so exciting. I just want to know what's like the most, romantic gift you've ever received from your husband?
It was way back. I think it was our first Christmas together, and my husband gave me a rabbit fur coat, which is, what was so special about it was because it was something I would never, ever buy for myself. And actually, I didn't really think of myself that way as far as being able to pull off a rabbit fur coat, this fur coat, Uh-huh. And I used to kind of be afraid of my femininity and beauty. And I kind of, it's still dear to me because I love that he saw that in me, even before I saw it in me.
Yeah, isn't that true? Like sometimes, a lot of times our spouse sees truth in us that we can't see ourselves yet.
Yeah.
And we need to kind of borrow that truth for a while until we can establish it ourselves. I love that. I'm excited to talk to you about intercourse today, especially from a female perspective, because the way media portrays things and a lot of people's experiences are so different. I want to know, first of all, what percentage of women actually reach orgasm through intercourse? I understand orgasm is not always the goal, but I think sex should be pleasurable for both people. And if intercourse is not pleasurable for her, that needs to be a conversation we need to have.
Right. So for women, only about 30% of women can have an orgasm during intercourse without any kind of extra stimulation, like of adding a vibrator or her hands in or his hands in. Mm-hmm. About 30% of women can have an orgasm during intercourse with that extra stimulation, and about 30% of women may never have an orgasm during intercourse. In fact, there's one study that shows evidence that it's literally the shape of the woman's body, the distance between the clitoris and the vagina. The greater that distance, the less likely she is to orgasm during intercourse, it's not surprising. You know, we all have different shaped bodies, and the clitoris is the main source of orgasm, right, for women. And so for many women, it's really not stimulated much during intercourse.
No, it's more like geometry and anatomy than it is anything else.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny. I think women can feel really broken when it comes to intercourse.
Probably because the media portrays that's
the media portrays that it's going to automatically happen, and even if you read Christian sex books, many times it might help women understand how their body works. That, you know, the clitoris is the main source of pleasure, but then they always have this progression to work towards somehow being able to have an orgasm during intercourse. And for many women, that doesn't happen on a regular basis. It might happen sometimes where like everything falls into place, and then you just somehow. I remember as a woman feeling like, yeah, I enjoyed sex, but I wasn't really having it the right way.
I gotcha. Yeah, thinking intercourse is the be all end all right way.
Right.
And then you read more secular sex books, and they put, I'm going to use the word outer course, kind of on the same level as intercourse. Like,
right. Yeah. I mean, a lot of secular books would say, you know, don't even worry about intercourse. That's kind of a myth that you can even have an orgasm during intercourse. Just do other things like oral stimulation or manual stimulation in order for you to enjoy sex. And then intercourse is more just for the guy. And that's kind of where I landed, actually. Intercourse didn't fall into place for me. It didn't feel like much at all, to be honest. And so we figured out what worked for me. And, you know, the book She Comes First. We
excellent
kind of
book.
We kind of grabbed hold of that philosophy. And intercourse became something for my husband. And it kind of became a time when I just checked out, because I thought, you know, there's nothing in this for me. And so we went years and years where that was just something for him, and I literally checked out.
Gotcha. So you had your orgasm, you were satisfied. Now it was his turn. So it was more like he can now hurry up and get what he wanted done so you can move on, kind of a thing, kind of check out. I want to talk about arousal for a second. Like, there's lots of ways we can be aroused, like physical touch and whatever, but aren't there other ways we can also experience arousal in our minds and our bodies? And
yeah, you know, when I started learning more and more about sex, I started learning about how there's so many different routes to arousal. I mean, when you read things like women can have an orgasm just from their mind alone, you start thinking, whoa, like, how is that even possible?
That's mind-blowing, pun intended, a little bit. Right?
But, you know, we can lean on the physicality of sex, of trying to create the right friction or the right vibration or whatever it is. And we can lean on the physicality of sex, but there's a lot of things that create arousal that have nothing to do with friction or body alignment. They have to do with our connection with our spouse. Are we really feeling emotionally connected with them? Are we feeling connected in the moment? Are we feeling seen? Are we really exposing ourselves? And are we taking our spouse in, and are they exposing themselves? And so those things that help us really learn how to connect during sex aren't just about feeling more emotionally connected. They also arouse our bodies and they create excitement. There is excitement in knowing that you're seeing the inmost, most naked parts of your spouse, and that they dare to share themselves with you, what excites them and what feels good.
Right. Sometimes we have found talking about like some of our favorite memories during lovemaking, or we'll even make up a silly scenario of like some like I don't know, we're in the beach or on the mountains, or, it's just something. And that really helps add to our arousal beyond just the physical, friction, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. I think words are powerful, especially for women. But
Yes. Uh-huh.
but can equally be so for men, and they can quickly take you from the everyday mundane to really fun, playful excitement.
Right, right. That's also why I like making sound, like with the lovemaking, with like expressing through sound what you're feeling, I think can also be a great source of connection and arousal too. That's more psychological than it is just like on friction too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me more. What was sex like when it was the she comes first pattern and you would check out? And then you're also learning more about sex and realizing that, wow, we can experience a lot of arousal with our mind. And then how did you shift there? What was your epiphany through all that?
Yeah. So as I started researching more and more about sex and learning about things, there was one book that actually impacted me really a lot, and that's Lou Paget's Orgasm book. And she sorts out her positions based on what kind of stimulation a woman will receive. And it really helped me with the body alignment part and trying to figure out what made sense as far as positions.
You're talking about intercourse positions.
Intercourse positions. And I just decided, for years, I decided that orgasm or pleasure even during intercourse wasn't possible.
So you kind of wrote it off, like
I just
never
wrote
mind.
it off. And, once your mind decides something's not possible, it's kind of not possible.
Right.
And I shifted that and I decided, you know what? I want to see what I can discover, because I believe that there's something here. And if I can believe it, then there's an opportunity to find something. And so we started trying a lot of things where I was in control. We slowed down the motion to sometimes just absolute stillness and me trying to actually feel something rather than this blur of thrusting where I felt nothing. So we really slowed things down. We really focused on connection, eye to eye, words. We paid attention to body alignments and trying to figure out what felt good to me. And we started making progress. And I started discovering pleasure and more pleasure during intercourse. Now, I want to just stop right here and say, this is not about me saying you need to have an orgasm during intercourse. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, rather than just writing it off, is there profound pleasure and connection that you can discover through intercourse with your spouse? So I started experiencing more connection, more pleasure through intercourse. And actually, as I created more and more pleasure, it actually got harder because it was no longer written off, and I was getting more and more excited, and it was hard when my husband would finish and I wouldn't have an orgasm, and I would just end up in a ball of frustration and tension. And it got really hard.
Wait, I almost had it.
Yeah, right. Like the closer you get, the more you can taste the goodness that is there. It's kind of hard when.
And if you'd finished prematurely, it would be really frustrating.
Yeah, it was hard. And not only was it adding pressure to me and expectation to me, but it was adding pressure to my husband, because I'm sure more and more in his mind, he was thinking, oh, like if I could just last long enough, she would make it. Now, that may or may not be true. I mean, it might be some days he could last for hours and it might not happen. Right? And so we really had to go through a process of removing that pressure from an anxiety for both of us, because the more that pressure mounted, the less we were connecting during intercourse. right?
Yeah.
He's laying there thinking, am I going to last long enough? I'm laying there thinking, am I going to finish this time?
Uh-huh.
So the only way that I could figure out how to remove that pressure is to figure out a way where if he finished during intercourse and I hadn't finished, that we could do something so I could finish afterwards.
Gotcha. Like,
Because otherwise I was worrying about whether I was going to orgasm. But not only that, I was setting up this negative pattern where I was finishing with this negative experience. And so I started expecting negative experiences. So we came up with what I call a plan B.
and
Other
endings, as I call it.
Our plan B was for my husband, every time after intercourse, regardless of what happened, to just say, hey, can we keep going?
I love that.
Right. And it was hopefully with this expectation of, hey, can we keep going? Because I love what's going on here. And it could be, and I had the choice. I could honestly say, no, you know what? That was amazing. It was connecting. It was enjoyable for me. I'm good. Or I could say, yeah, like, can we keep going? Because I'm kind of this is tough right now. And so, and a plan B for a couple might look like a wife using her hands on her body and a husband using his hands on her breasts, or him using his hands or pulling out a vibrator and using a vibrator, but a way that she can finish and not be left hanging.
Yeah.
I just think that's so important. Like, if you're going to create connection during intercourse, you have to take off the pressure and the anxiety for both of you.
Right.
So
And
you can just enjoy whatever happens.
enjoy that. It takes a kind of a bit of surrender to be able to like kind of go with the flow and be okay with whatever happened, right? And that's
and it's a hard conversation to have.
Yeah.
Because it's talking about some things where one or both of you might feel like you're failing. Right. And you have to get this place where it's not about either of you failing.
And it's not about egos. It's not like you're competing against each other. You're just working together towards something.
Yeah. So that was a big shift for us. It's been something that is part of our marriage bed ever since. And it's taken off the pressure. Do I still struggle sometimes? Yeah, absolutely. I'll be honest with you. I do remember pointedly in one night of just feeling frustrated because things had gone so well, and once again I was left hanging. And I remember praying to God and just saying, God, you know what? I'm done. If you want this to happen once, sometimes, whatever, then I'm going to trust you with this. And if it doesn't happen, I'm good with that too. I still want to enjoy this. I still want to enjoy the pleasure that we can create and the connection that we can create through it. And since that time, it's been things. I could say things magically fall in place and everything was perfect ever after, and that's not true. But there is something about surrendering to God and trying to not control things so much.
Right. Yeah. I like that. You said something profound just a moment ago too about when you look for negative experiences, you're going to have negative experiences. When you look for positive experiences, you're going to have positive experiences. Can you talk on that a little more?
Yeah, and I think this is it's a really important truth that we need to put towards all of sexuality, and that is that, if positive experience, when you have a positive experience, the next time you expect something good. But when you have a negative experience, you start expecting something negative. And as you expect something negative, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But if you can create a positive experience, it does the same thing. These positive experiences, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So when I'm struggling, or when women in my classes are struggling with sex, I really encourage them, like, you need to step back, all the way back to this place where it's a positive experience. It is a no-lose experience, right? And then enjoy that for a while, and then build on that. And so that was a big part of coming up with a plan B for us during intercourse, and my husband saying, hey, can we keep going? Because I wanted to create a positive experience rather than having a chance of a negative experience, and then just expecting. There's so much power in our mind, right? If you don't expect to get anything out of sex, you won't get anything out of it. If you expect to discover something new, you'll discover something new. If you
It's our attitude towards it all.
Yeah.
And if you don't like this kind of sex you're having now, rather than wallowing in your misery or blaming your spouse for it, like, figure out what needs to change within you and do that. Like, start with yourself, and you can change that attitude. You'll see great results.
Yeah. I mean, when women hate sex, I'm like, stop having sex. Like, don't keep having sex that you hate.
Right.
Figure out something you enjoy, and then build on that. If sex is painful, stop having
painful sex.
Sex is painful, because the pain will get worse. It won't get better.
Right. Yeah. All right. Now let's talk about intercourse tips for husbands. Like, how can husbands make intercourse better for their wives?
Yeah. I think that husbands can carry a lot of pressure and anxiety when it comes to intercourse.
Like performance mentality or whatever.
Performance, absolutely. Of like, if I just last long enough, or if I just move the right way.
Or if I was bigger or longer.
Bigger, longer. Yeah, all of those things. And it's not helpful. But there are a lot of ways that a husband can help, right? Recognizing that her body is different than yours, and what her body will enjoy is different, and that maybe you don't understand what that is, and to give her permission to explore and figure out what that looks like. And that might even mean sometimes a husband's laying on his back perfectly still, not moving at all. And she's on top trying to figure out what feels good, deep, shallow, slow, whatever it is, she's trying to feel him. And for a husband to be able to lay there and not become anxious about losing his erection, or, that he needs to start moving. It takes a lot of trust in yourself, in your body, and in your relationship, that, if you lose an erection, you can always get it back. So yeah, giving her permission, but I think also believing that the two of you can create great pleasure for her and connection, and encouraging her when it's been hard for her, and reminding her of what they've discovered together and the steps that they've taken. Like, be her cheerleader, and really be open to learning new things and enjoying things in a different way for yourself. Because I think the way that a wife has sex may help a husband understand a new and different dimension of sexuality for himself.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Any other tips for husbands? Like, what can they do to really, I don't know, like techniques or moves, like more practical ideas?
Sure. One of the most successful positions for women to have an orgasm during intercourse is when she's on top. And it's because she has control and can create the stimulation that she wants. I think a husband being open to additional stimulation rather than taking it personally is really important. And so that might be your hand or your thumb placed in a special location for her to rub against, or it might be her hands, or it might even be incorporating a vibrator sometimes. Sometimes additional stimulation is great. I think there are other times when simplifying things can be equally interesting and insightful. Sometimes
Simplifying?
you have a
Okay.
million things going on. It's not necessarily helpful. You need to just like simplify. So yeah, definitely woman on top position. Also, what people typically call missionary position, right? But if instead of being up on all fours, if you're down laying on top of her, and if you shift your body up, it will wrap your shaft across her vulva and her clitoris, and it's more of a bumping and grinding.
Then it is like an in and out motion. Yeah.
Rather than an in and out. The in and out of a penis, friction to friction in the vagina, is typically not very helpful for her because it doesn't stimulate her clitoris and it doesn't stimulate her G-spot. Yeah. Neither one. And so that works great for you, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But you doing that for hours on end most likely will only make her sore.
Right. Someone gave me the analogy like the amount of sensation the vaginal wall feels is about the equivalent of the inside of your cheek. So if you could just imagine just rubbing the inside of your cheek, like, yeah, you can feel something there, but it's not a sexual turn on just from rubbing that. And yeah, it will get sore after a while.
And even the outside 1/3 of the vagina has the most nerves. The inside 2/3 has much fewer nerves. But I even think, we have this idea of what intercourse looks like in our mind. And sometimes I think even just taking a step back, especially maybe for the wife, to take a step back and dream about, well, what would feel good? And it might be nothing like what the movies portray intercourse looking like, right? It might literally be the head of his penis pressed just at the entrance of her vagina and hardly moving at all, or moving at like the slowest snail's pace of pressing slowly into her body. That might be what she likes. And so I think it takes real confidence for a man to try things that are maybe not necessarily intuitive to him and that are different. Yeah. And then, we talked a lot about tapping into connection, right? Tapping into connection. And sometimes that's with your eyes. Sometimes it's with your words. Like, at just the right moment when she's so very close to just say, I gotcha. Just let go, or whatever it is where she knows you've tuned into her that much that you know where she's at. That's the point of it, is that you know where she's at, right? And you're communicating those things.
If I can offer a few more tips on top of what you said.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That's excellent. Like intercourse has gotten better when I learned that it's less about friction and more about sexual energy. So it's kind of a mental shift, but you want to really think about like, what's my turn on right now? And can I pump this turn on, this sexual energy into my spouse? And can I receive that from her and back into me? Like to kind of have that image really changes it's less mechanical and more connecting. Instead of more body to body, it's more soul to soul.
Yeah.
And eye contact really enhances the experience. Slowing things down, tuning into my core masculine strength and my masculine energy. I think all those things can really help enhance just the experience for both people.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Thanks.
Great. Well, we've covered a lot of things. Anything else about letting her take control of the situation, letting her take control?
I think that she needs to think in terms of, like, she needs to wipe out her ideas of what intercourse looks like too,
Yes. Uh-huh.
right? And I would say, I teach this concept in my classes of feel versus rub. And sometimes you pick up the most through just being still, right? You can feel a pulse if you keep your fingers on the wrist and you don't move, but the minute you start moving, you won't feel it. Okay.
Right.
And so I think really starting from a place of stillness and really feeling him inside of you and feeling your own body.
We're talking about
feel
feel as in like an emotional feel, not like tactile feel alone, I think.
Feel deeply rather than surface.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's a great starting point. Think about things that you enjoy through other stimulation that gives you that help you have an orgasm, and then try to translate those things to how you have intercourse, creating those things together. That's one idea. I don't know. I'm kind of drawing a blank here, Daniel.
That's fine. So how is intercourse different for you now than it was before, now that you've learned all these things? What's it like now?
Yeah. I think it's completely different. It used to be for him, and now it's for both of us. It used to be this thing that I just endured.
Uh-huh.
And now it's immensely connecting, immensely pleasurable, sometimes more so than other times. It's a unique way that we work together during sex, as far as like getting to a place where neither one of you is leading, but you're moving together. Mm-hmm. You're that tuned into each other. I think it's something that you don't encounter except maybe through intercourse. And it's something that I look forward to, and my body yearns for, rather than just something for my husband.
That's good. Anything else you want to share with us today?
I think that we have to be open to possibilities and discovery. And that if we don't think that things are possible, then we minimize, or we don't receive the goodness that God has for us in this. Mm-hmm. I think that working to make intercourse more enjoyable is a huge area of growth for both the husband and the wife. And if you don't work through those things, then you're also missing out on that growth of learning new ways to talk about sex and communicate about hard things and be real with each other, and how to really connect during intercourse. And so I just think, don't write it off. Like, see what you can discover through this, rather than just deciding that this is something that's for husbands and it may never, you may never orgasm that way.
That's excellent. Thank you very much. Could you tell our listeners your name of your website and things like that?
Sure. You can find me at awaken-love.net. I have, my main focus is I have classes for wives. They're 6-week video classes, or in person with me, or on Zoom with me. I have classes for men for 6 weeks. And then I have a book out there on Amazon called Awaken Love.
It's an excellent book. I recommend it.
Thanks.
We hope that you enjoyed this episode of Get Your Marriage On. And if you did, we would love it if you would take a few seconds to give us a rating on iTunes and to share the show with your friends. They'll thank you for life. Once you've done that, you can head over to getyourmarriageon.com for more resources about today's topic and to download our amazing marriage apps. Now go get your marriage on.